Can you tell me a little bit about yourself and what you use Tana for?
Yeah, so I'm a student, a fourth year student. So I just started my master's degree in biotechnology. I've been using Tana for what's a bit over a year now. So I guess I was probably one of the first alpha users. And I've been using it for taking notes for my classes and for my textbooks and just anything in my study, notes from papers I read and stuff. I've been using
Yeah.
it to keep track of all my tasks. And then also for a lot of different extracurricular activities that I've been involved with outside of my university, but like different student group things, I've been using it a lot. It's basically been where I've written anything that I have written the past, a bit over a year.
Really?
Apart from assignments, which I write in LaTeX, I haven't written that in Tana, but anything else really I've written there.
That's pretty cool. So you write almost everything in Tana. You write your notes from papers, tasks, extracurricular activities.
Yeah.
You think out loud into it. And what were you doing before Tana?
God, I was doing more notes like from lectures and stuff. I would definitely do more notes on paper, which about the time that I was starting to use Tana, I was trying to move away from that. I think I used OneNote, Microsoft's OneNote, like very briefly one semester. And then I was using various like Google Docs, which is kind of what actually spurred me into starting to use Tana. Was I was working quite intensively on the student project over the summer, 2 year or like last summer, not this one, the one before. And every single morning we would have this meeting and we would just be throwing so many different ideas out there about what to do in the lab later. And every morning I would just open a Google Docs and I'd start writing and I get stuff lost. And then suddenly I just had 10 Google Docs that all said untitled document. And I had no way to extrapolate like the useful figures and notes I'd written. And it became a bit of a mess, which is what like motivated me to just sit down and like, okay, I'll spend an afternoon and learn how to navigate around this. And then pretty much immediately that was way better than having all these Google pages.
It's kind of crazy how, like, I feel like that's a common mode for students. They'll have like everything in Google Docs or everything in Word files, or like just in like tons of separate ones, maybe like for each class session that they're in, or like each meeting. And there's no real way to easily like put it all together. Like my girlfriend's in law school and they gave her a class on how to write an outline in preparation for a test. And it's like this 30-page long Microsoft Word doc. And it's just like there's software that can make that a good amount easier.
And it kind of just became the same as when I'm taking notes for hand, which I still do in like math classes. I don't really ever go back and look at them because they're in a book somewhere. They're difficult to find. They're not structured. And it becomes the same when it's a bunch of Word files or Google Doc files for me.
Cool. That makes a lot of sense. Want to show me something?
Yeah, I can do that. Well, this is my home tree in Tana. This is going to be a good mixture of Norwegian and English in my notes. I have basically all the notes that I have on this main tree are like the main areas of stuff I've been taking notes for. I haven't bothered with emojis once we go further into the tree. And this first one here is really just, I was using this way before the schema appeared. So this is my collection and organization of like all the tags and attributes that I use for different stuff. And I just have them under that node. Really, it makes no difference to me if they're in schema or if they're in that node. But this is probably the one that I'm using most these days. It's all my notes for my study program. And I guess the semester just started, so I might actually just show you one from last semester when there actually was notes. So the way that I will usually, I wrote some notes before her too, they're there. But the way I usually go about taking notes when I'm in a class, most things I'll just take all notes down on my today node. So I'll be in class and I'll just, say lecture on microbiology uses. And I have a tag called lecture note, in which I just put down which class I'm taking that is a lecture in. So probably, some molecular biology. Actually, I think I cleaned those up because it was a while since I took that class. But yeah, let's go wild and say that was computational biology.
Okay.
And I'll just put down the date too. And yeah, I'll take all my notes from the lecture in here. If I have a question at some point, which usually happens, I will write that down as I go along, so I know what questions to ask during the break or stuff. And I have like a live search that picks up all the questions from each lecture. So it's easy to see at the end of a lecture if there's still stuff that isn't cleared up that I need to follow on. And I also had this other
Can you just show me real quick what that live query is? Like pause it and just take a look.
God, I made this such a long time ago. I'm not super comfortable using these ones because I just made it as a command line thing. But I'm pretty sure it's just find nodes with tag question from parent area as list. Yeah, it's that
from parent area as list.
That was quicker for me than going through this.
Yeah, that makes sense. That's super fast.
But yeah.
So parent descendants with refs. So basically that takes your microbiology uses node and then searches for anything underneath that's tagged as a question. I can see how that would be a really easy way to just kind of get some of the core takeaways and things that you need to work on. Do you use that as and how do you use that question tag?
Yeah, so I was going to show you too, because that question tag, the reason I have a live search under that specific lecture, I think it's something I added mid-lecture at some point last semester. I was taking a class that was pretty hard and I had a lot of questions during the lectures. And it's mostly just for me to get a condensed, I would have huge, lots of notes from that lecture, and just get a little list of questions that I could ask the lecturer during the break or at the end of the lecture specifically. But what I've used earlier, and I still use, is when sometimes I'll hear something in a lecture and I'll go, wow, okay, I need to look into this further, but it's not happening right now. And I did have one that, if you can tell that I'm studying biology, but I have one where I would just tag it as a thing I need to read more on. Apparently that's connected to a project and not a class. I'm not entirely sure why I've done that, but they're pretty overlapping. And again, these are old classes that I'm not taking anymore, which is why I'm only getting my current classes now here. And then during, when I was revising for exams, I had quite a few searches for these read more things. And I think if we go into, let's think about this class, I definitely took a lot of notes. So this is, as I said, I would take all these notes in just my today node. And then I have a lot of just live searches set up under these different class specific. This is molecular biology that I took last autumn. So I'll have a list of, I didn't go to a lot of lectures in that class, but I'll have a list of the lecture notes from the ones that I did attend. I think this is from, different chapters that I've read in the textbook. They're quite similarly structured. And then also, this is, I guess, a list I was using for just finding anything that I, during the semester, said, oh, I need to read more on this during exam times. And I think, probably a lot of these I seem to have added some notes to. I don't know if I got around to reading about all of them, actually.
That's pretty cool that you've set up that pipeline for yourself. So I guess so do you set up all those? I noticed there's no tag on the class note, biology 2014, right? Because I was just wondering, is this a consistent template for you that?
Yeah, I was actually thinking about that just yesterday, because I'm starting the work in my master thesis now, and I'm setting up quite a larger space just for work on that. And I was thinking about how today maybe I would have gone in and created a tag called class or something like that, which would have had all these as automatic, because I've been using the same setup quite a bit. But again, I kind of also, it's not like it takes me a lot of time, which is why I haven't done it yet. I don't have that many classes left in uni, so I probably might not get around to it. And also, they're not all, this is a current class. I don't think I've been to one lecture in that class so far. And I might not use the exact same setup for that because it's a different type of class. So But I definitely could structure it into using tags more for like the automated way to do it. Yeah, so that was kind of, I guess, what I've been showing you here. So this is actually, these are all pretty bad examples because these were from, this is more recent classes. Yeah, let's do this one. This is the one I had all the questions in. And for this one, you can kind of, I guess, yeah, this is the main use, like I've been using it for classes. It's just taking notes from lectures, taking notes from, yeah, from when I was reading textbooks. Apparently, yeah, putting down different, I think this is, yeah, this says reading plan for my exam. So this is probably something I wrote while I was reading for my exam, but I'll have different like PDFs or just collections of like when the lectures are and stuff just collected in one place. And I think we worked with a lot of network models in this course. So I made a tag for that just to collect them. But yeah, this is kind of why I've also enjoyed not having such rigid structure around these classes, because I use them for different things. I was in the reference group for this one, so I also have some feedback for the reference group apparently. Yeah, and that's kind of my daily use with with how I've been using that. I also use, I said I used like task tracking. That's what I'm using Tana for. And I use that a lot. Like I have on my today node, I just have an always this new task one. All the child nodes from new task are always just tag task. So even quicker to just get down a new task. And I have live searches kind of set up all over the place in my tree with different ones. So this first one here is just a constant everything that is related to university collected here. And then in some other parts of the tree, I have some other ones that also consist of errands and stuff. And they're pretty simple. They belong to a certain project. These are all study related, different classes or my thesis. And then for some of them, I'll have, see this one I can't finish yet because I have to ask for help at this exact question, apparently. And I just added the due date last week, I think.
So this is like your master task list, right?
This is my master task list within university stuff. So
okay.
My actual master task list is elsewhere, and I think under here. I don't think I have a lot of non-university things to be doing right now. Yeah, it's all university stuff. I used to have a lot of non-university stuff when I was more involved in these extracurricular stuff last year. Yeah.
Okay, so you use it for your studies, you use it for your tasks. Your task workflow seems fairly straightforward, where you just you log a task and you say which project it's related to.
Yeah, I could show you. So this is not an extracurricular I'm super involved with administratively anymore, so I don't take that many notes on it, but I was a coordinator for the photography group at a local student organization here. So I was at some point meeting when 35 or so photographers were working during like this festival that we run here and all these events. And I was doing that for a year. It was quite while I was learning to use Tana, and I used it a lot for, just realized those notes aren't actually there. Here they are, for keeping track of my meeting notes when we have meetings. Which is something I had a lot of use for. So this is every Monday we have a meeting that has a very like rigid meeting structure. So this torsdagsmöte tag is just, this is the setup that comes with that tag, and every meeting, this is probably a bad example actually, because it didn't look like I went to that one. Or that one, I don't know what I was doing these weeks. This one. It doesn't really matter, but yeah, sometimes I would attend a meeting before, which is this first node, which apparently I didn't do in week 39. And then I would have some different notes from what I would say under the different points. And then it means jobs we were hired to do. And I was in touch with the people who'd hired us and had to find photographers for the jobs. And all of these ones too, I would have. This really helped me to keep track of like who to email with response, and when things were and where they were and all that kind of stuff. And for this, a lot of the time I would have to email this information out afterwards, and I would just do an export. That's how it works, right? Export plain HTML and get something like this. And I would just paste that into an email and send it off after a lot of meetings.
Yeah, that's awesome. Do you have other meeting workflows you can show too?
This is the main thing that I've been
Main
using.
one.
I have there is a meeting tag. I don't actually even think I've created the meeting tag. I think I might have imported it with some pre-existing Tana tags a year ago. And I guess, yeah, I've used this for a few different meetings. This would be from my stuff I was doing last summer. Those are pretty simple. They're just, well, yeah, the outcome and agenda like you're seeing here.
One thing I'm noticing, I noticed that in attending, you don't have linked references, or you don't have inline references to the different people who are attending.
Oh yeah, I
and you
wouldn't
just have
have
it as
any of these
text.
people tagged as the person either. I definitely see the value in that in some cases. For my case, in my private notes, I know who Alex and Tina is. And honestly, there is sure, there's some satisfaction in having references for all these people and stuff.
Right.
But at a certain point, I feel like you kind of just cross into that territory where when I was 5 and I got an email, probably I was older than 5 when I got my first email, and I'd go enter the address of everyone I knew into the Google contact of their address.
Oh, yeah.
But it was mostly organizational fun more than it was ever actually useful to me. And that's kind of why I haven't been doing that, because it would take some time, not a lot of time, but
yeah,
it's also maybe in the future, but definitely in a larger not just me workspace. Hasn't been anything that I've felt I needed so far.
That makes sense. Yeah, I mean, there's different advantages and disadvantages. For if you had those as references, then you would be able to say what are all the questions that have come up in a meeting that had this person in attendance? But at the same time, that tension that you point to of is it organization for organization's sake, or is it actually helping me further my goals? That's really interesting. Can you elaborate on that and how you've experienced that in your own Tana workspace?
Yeah, well, it is. I've been thinking about it because it is a few times, say with my tasks, I do have every time I'm doing a task, I do have to allocate a specific project to it, for example, for all these live searches that I've set up to do as I want them to do. And I've been thinking, is that I'm quite interested in having as structured notes as possible, or as needed, I guess, more so than as possible, but not encroaching on the time it takes to tag everything. The reason that I really enjoyed using Tana, as I said, was that it was so quick and easy for me to just get thoughts down and then know where they are, or not so much know that where they are, but being able to tag them in such a way that I might just easily pick them out in a useful manner later. And I guess yeah, just any additional tagging to that, it can be really, really satisfying, the level of organization, and definitely we talked about earlier with the how you could create a template for all my classes and all that kind of stuff. That would be satisfying from everything is classified kind of a standpoint. But I think, yeah, I'm trying to not spend a lot of time setting attributes and stuff whilst I'm taking notes, because when I'm in the lecture and I'm taking notes, I don't want to have a list of 10 fields where I'm setting attributes and fields for that lecture note, because really I'm supposed to be in the lecture listening to whatever the lecturer is talking about. So yeah, I try to balance that.
Do you use inline references much?
I've started to use them more. For a long time I didn't know they were there, to be honest. And then I think it was the moment they added them on the @ key. This is probably a while ago, actually. I started using them. I started using them when I was writing a a draft for this paper I was doing in molecular biology. And I think it was when I was I've been trying to figure that out right now, actually, since I'm doing research for my thesis and I'm reading a lot of papers. And I've been previously I've used EndNote, which I think is Microsoft. I'm not 100% sure, actually. And different reference library keepers. And now I'm just trying to use Tana for it. Which is also not, it's not perfect, obviously, because you don't have the exportation of references, which these other programs will give you. But for me, like the reason I am doing it is because it's so much easier. So when I'm writing, I think it's this class. Yeah, there you go. Yeah, when I'm writing now, this is something I did a year ago, but I think I still use this kind of setup where I'll just have the title of the paper, I'll tag it a paper. I usually have some link to it, so I know where it is and some notes on it. And then I'm pretty sure this is before my spell check kicked in, as you can see. Yeah, I've been using it like this somewhere in my notes to list back to like what reference I've been using. That's definitely the main. I think that's the main use I've had of inline references.
So there you're using it mainly as like a see more over here sort of thing.
Yeah, I think so. I'm trying to think if I used it for other things. For dates too. Sometimes I'll tag that, something's happening on a certain date, and then if you go to your today note on that date, you obviously get it linked.
Have you used the unlinked references for those at all?
No, honestly, I don't even think that I know what that is. I have not really looked into this.
Okay, so if we go back to that note, maybe
the one in here.
Yeah, maybe like try highlighting antibodies and turn that into a node.
Like this one?
Yeah.
Sorry, what do you mean turn it into a node?
Press at.
Oh, like add a reference.
Yeah, and then create it.
This is not something I've ever done, and I think you need to be more specific. What?
Yeah, scroll up a bit and create antibodies. So yeah, okay, now click on antibodies. Yeah, let's go there. You have 50 unlinked mentions. So
that's probably just me writing the word antibodies other places, wouldn't it be?
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So so the thing you can do there is generally just like if there's a term that comes up a lot, you can use the linked references and unlinked references as a sort of like collector for stuff about that.
Yeah, for sure. I think I'm not against it, but I do think it borders on, if I need a search of antibodies, I'll probably just use a keyword search, or I will have. I'm not sure I'm going to use this in the immediate future for that kind of use necessarily, but I appreciate like the connectedness of it. I do.
No, I mean, this is super. Just to be clear, I'm not like suggesting these things to be like, hey, your system is incomplete, you should do this thing. It's more just to kind of like poke at it a little bit and be like, okay, it's interesting what you're doing, but also like if it's getting into that organization for organization's sake thing, or if it's something that's like genuinely helpful and you've just kind of
oh yeah, and there's definitely
like I'm sure
a lot of genuinely helpful, and I haven't discovered it yet, stuff in Tana, because I learned how to use this a year ago, and then I'm not super quick on like reading all the newsletters I was about to say for latest developments since. So there's definitely been cases of people discovering things since then, like as such as in these inline references I really enjoy. They didn't come about for a while after I'd been using it.
Yeah. Do you ever shift click on it on like the inline references to like expand inline?
So now that you say that, I do remember discovering that before and then evidently never doing it again. So yeah, no, I wouldn't say I ever do that, but I think I would probably, I guess a shift click is the way you would expand that. Maybe I think probably I would have just opened it like this, like a new square. It's probably what I would have done.
That makes sense. Well,
but like in this case, a shift click would have been good because the only thing I would have needed was the link.
Right. And I mean, I think that like one of the things about your system. So here's an overall question. Do you feel like you're on top of your stuff right now?
Oh yeah. I mean, to be fair, look, I wouldn't attribute that all to Tana. Sure. I was definitely on top of my stuff before too. I just had, I spent more time trying to organize my notes, and probably a lot took a bit less efficient notes. But yeah, I definitely feel like I'm on top of where I need to be note wise, and it's a lot easier now. It is.
So the difference between now and before was that in your old systems with like Google Docs or OneNote or whatever, you were still on top of everything, but it just took more work from you. And then now you
It
feel
was
like,
more
yeah.
divided. Like I was using Google Tasks really intensively to keep track of my tasks. Now I'll just write them down in the middle of lecture note whenever they come up. And it's quicker, I think, is kind of the main part for me. It's quicker without any information disappearing, which I would have to like work harder and therefore spend longer time on before.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. And really, like, that's one of the things that I think is incredible about Tana. Like, I'm sure it's possible you've talked with Grim about this idea before, but low floor, wide walls, high ceiling. Low floor being, for anyone viewing this, low floor being that it doesn't take much work to pick up Tana in a very basic way, but still gain value out of it. High ceiling means you can always get better and there's always more stuff you can do. And wide walls means it accommodates a wide array of use cases. So as long as you feel on top of your stuff, like using Tana, and that's satisfying, you don't need to use more features. You don't need to get more advanced in Tana, if you're already accomplishing your goal.
And like again, I think like the very first time I saw Tana, obviously it looked a lot less fancy back then. It's quite pretty looking right now, but then it was really just, it looked like a bullet list to me. And I'd been using OneNote previously, and I was like, okay, it's a bullet list. I know this, but obviously it was more than that. And it took me like, I think an afternoon, and then it was just like maybe a bit slow for a day or two, maybe just one day. And then it was fine. Then it was already way more useful than OneNote ever had been. From a very like low barrier of entry there.
Those like day or two extra, do you like remember at all what you were doing in that time period? Like what new stuff you were bringing in? Or
I was working, I mean, I have the node still because that's that project I was working on that entire summer. And this thing, like this whole space is a bit of a mess. I was learning how to do things, but I think mostly I was just taking a lot of intensive notes for lab work. And I was writing some other stuff. This is for a synthetic biology competition I was in. But it was really more like my dad showed me in like a span of an hour maybe, like in one afternoon, and then I was just like clicking around for a bit, looking at tags. And then the next day I started using this when I went in to do work, and that was pretty much it. I think I did like a lot of I evidently created a tag of like crazy ideas that I had for the project that I could just jot down at any point, and evidently I had a search for that. And I think I just wrote, oh, here you go, I had some notes from labs, and I think there's some interview notes somewhere down here. They're not super organized, but I could definitely find them if I needed to.
So even from that period, right, like it was easy for you to just organize things into an outline, going from high level to low level stuff. Were you using tags at all in this project?
So like this live search that I just created right now, as I was thinking, where are those interview notes? I mean, that's the beauty. So I apparently all my human practices interviews, I tagged HB interview, and there they are. So I was using it for that. I had a few different tags for different things, and then when the semester rolled around, I started using like basically what is my lecture note class note taking system. It's been revised a bit since then, but it's pretty similar. Like that way, it's not rocket science to make a tag called lecture note. It's pretty simple.
What advice would you give to new users?
Well, that's a difficult question. Well, I guess if you were like coming at it from my angle of just using it for your everyday note taking, you don't need to be like, note taking doesn't need to be your field of interest for it to be beneficial to have like a good note-taking structure. So just like start simple. Honestly, I would say don't go crazy with the amount of tags. Like later down the line, you can tag every single person in your note as a person, but maybe that's not super useful to you, and you're just going to spend a lot of time doing that. Like if you're not even using tags in Tana, it is still like a functional like tree structure. Even that could be useful. But yeah, I definitely think tags are super useful. But I would say like start basic with just a few of them and make those work for you.
And what would you say is your general like way of using tags? Like what do you use tags for?
I think everything that I tag, I usually tag with like, I'm going to set up a search for this tag later, is the main idea. And then in recently also, yeah, when I've been doing work on my thesis and stuff, it's basically like, this is a paper has an abstract. What are my notes for the abstract? Certain kind of like structure like that too. But like my motivation behind using tags is always like efficiency, I would say. So I would tag a paper with, this is a paper, because it gives me a lot of structure around how I would structure my notes anyway, and that makes it quick and efficient. And then I will tag things, tasks or lecture notes or things like that, because it makes it very, very easy to find them later.
A big takeaway from this call is just that there are so many ways to be efficient in Tana, right? It doesn't take much to be efficient. Like all it takes is some basic structuring in the outline and some tags where it's like, oh, I know I'm going to want to see a group of these things together in the future. So I'm just going to add this tag to it. And then you add the fields based on what you want to do with it, right? Like do I want to sort by priority for tasks? Like I'll just add a field for that. It's very cool to see. And what are you excited about with the future of Tana?
Again, like I'm a simple user. I'm just excited to keep using it, to be honest. Like it's obviously still in development, so there's bugs every now and then. I'm excited for those to go away. I'm sure there are many great features coming, and I'm sure I'll get to them eventually, but I'm usually not the one to check them out first anyways.
Thanks so much for doing this. Really appreciate you taking the time out of your evening.
Yeah, no worries. That was fun.
Yeah.
Yep. All right. Well, have a good day.
You too.